What is shadow schooling? Is it the hidden parallel education system in India? And who is getting benefited from it and how? Did you know 1 in 3 school students are attending private coaching classes? Why? Because schools are not able to keep up with the competitive exam demands, or parents want their kids to get into top of the colleges. But this is leading to a rise of a parallel industry, which is the shadow schooling. Is it really helping, or is it just adding to stress and cost? Let us try to understand that today. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to talk about shadow schooling, a parallel system that is being created to the mainstream educational system, why it has been present and what are the problems it has been causes. We are going to understand all of it. So when we talk about this particular term, let's start with the term itself, that what exactly is shadow schooling. So जहाँ हम shadow schooling की बात कर रहे हैं, इसका मतलब कुछ और नहीं है. Basically अगर कोई student जो है वो private coaching या tuitions ले रहा है अपने main schooling system से हटके, that means a student if he is taking private tuitions or coaching classes apart from the formal education, that is something that we can refer as shadow schooling. The reason we are using the word shadow here, because it is very much parallel to the main system of schooling. It remains parallel to it and it also follows, reflects and follows the mainstream system, but it focuses more on performance and credentials as well. Now let us try to understand a bit more about this system, especially in India as of now. As I started with it, 1 in 3 students as of now in India is enrolled in a private coaching. If you look at the prevalence of it in urban areas and rural areas, it is not very different, because in urban areas you will find 30%, a little more than 30% in private coaching, 25% from rural areas. If you are talking about secondary, higher secondary classes, that means 11th and 12th, urban participation is way more and it stands somewhere around 45%. Other than that, it's not that the students are moving towards private coaching classes. Only in higher classes, we are finding that even pre-primary children, they are also going for private tuitions, to a presence of 13.6% in urban areas and 10.7% in rural areas. That's not all in terms of number. Let us look at another number here. When we are talking about numbers, we also have to understand the expenditure that comes with it. So if we are talking about urban household, the annual expenditure that is coming in terms of private coachings, it's somewhere around 4,000. But if we are talking about rural household, it is somewhere around 2,000, and this cost is for per child. But as of now, as you can clearly see that the difference is of almost 2x that is present. And this is being quoted from the recent government report that has come out. And this coaching cost is varying across the stages of the school formal education, and it also keeps on steadily increasing. Now to understand the steady increase in the coaching cost, let us look at this particular diagram. Now herein you can see that the expenditure, the average annual expenditure that comes in, it is the lowest at the pre-primary level and it gradually increases to the higher secondary level, and that is something more worrying when we talk about private education, private school education. For example, the same statistics, same government report shows us that the average family expenditure on government schools is somewhere around 3,000, but if we talk about private schools, it is almost 9 times more, that is more than 25,000. So this is where we see a stark difference in terms of formal education as well, school education, and private coaching classes as well. And another factor that we need to bring into consideration, that who is bearing this expenditure. That is why I just mentioned that government schooling, even though the cost is lesser, the preference for government school is limited to tier 2, tier 3 and rural areas, but in urban areas, parents still prefer to send students to private schools. Now let us look into who is looking after this expenditure. Now, if we talk about expenditure and who is taking care of that expenditure, 95% of student expenses is funded by the household members. That is the family that is looking after the education expenditure of the kids. And if we talk about government helps, then the government contribution in this particular sector remains minimal, less than 2% as of now. That means the burden is on family and the higher burden is on local income groups. Now here we find that the burden of school formal education does exist, वो तो है ही है, but साथ ही साथ ये जो shadow system का, shadow schooling का burden है, वो एक added burden है और ये हर level के साथ cost जो है बढ़ जा रहा है. So we find that the expenditure of formal school education does exist, but now there is an added expenditure of shadow schooling as well, and this is raised every level. So now let us try to understand that what are the causes that exist behind it. So when we are talking about the causes, the first and the primary cause, that is the fact that exam oriented education system is present. The competitive exams, especially after class 11th and 12th, there is presence of JEE is there, NEET is there. Now if we want to get into any sort of exam, CUET is there, and the school curriculum is not able to match up to this level. So if the parents want their kids to perform, if the student wants to do better in these exams, they look for outside help and they want to start earlier. The earlier they start, they feel the better they will be able to do. Another perceived notion is that coaching is the only way to success, especially at the preliminary levels, because the school system is not able to provide that in the very curriculum. Apart from that, even if there are students who can actually do it on their own, there is societal pressure, there is peer pressure, they are seeing their friends going to private coaching, tuitions are being taken, and that is also creating students to move towards at this very educational level. And then the most fundamental issue, the gap that exists in the curriculum of the schools, which is probably will be addressed by NEP and the upcoming educational reforms that we have been talking about. But the result that remains to be seen can be seen in a coming few years, not immediately. But now the question rises, if these are the causes, what is that we are worried about? If it is private coaching or private tuitions, if they are helping, we need to understand, apart from being burden, we need to actually look into the fact, are they really helping or they are just adding stress and cost in this particular situation. In this situation, we are finding that the shadow schooling is further widening the gap between the rich and poor, and it is limiting the accessibility. That means it is reinforcing inequality in our country. Once we find that the parallel system exists, it is directly undermining the school education, which we can see in the mindset of parents as well as students, that they are reliant on more private tuitions rather than the classes of the school itself. Furthermore, it leads to academic and psychological pressure because of the societal and peer pressure that exists, and that leads to more stress but no positive outcome as well. That also facilitates the decline in teaching quality that we get to see at the school formal education, especially, and when we are talking about private tuitions, there is no standard quality that is maintained, that is also hampered. And this shadow schooling altogether leads to a broader challenge to the whole of the education system, especially for the students, for the youth that will be coming up in the country in the coming years, and this needs to be corrected. What are your suggestions to put this right? You can put it down in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.